Alright, so here we have in our on display is our instrument cluster for the Mercedes-Benz Actros or Mercedes-Benz truck. As you can see here, it's quite an interactive dash. On the left-hand side, you've got your speedo with a fuel gauge below it, and on the right-hand side, you've got your rev range or rev meter with an AdBlue gauge below that one. In the centre here, our main instrument cluster, you've got a variety of functions that we use within the truck. So these 6 tabs up the top here are our 6 main chapters. And then to the left here, down the blue bar goes down and can scroll through separate pages within each chapter. So chapter 1, we call that our truck info. So here you'll have your odometer. The main display here is obviously max total kilometres we've done, current time and temperature. As we flick down as well, you can have your drive or your synth start, your odometers that you can reset. Includes hours, average speed and fuel consumption as well. So the advantage here is that you can have an overall consumption that the truck has done throughout its life, or we can get down to a synth reset function. So then you can reset it per trip and just have a fuel reading and an average speed of a certain trip. Also within here we have our range gauge, so you can see the fuel and AdBlue levels at the moment, but it also gives you an estimated range of how far you've got left to go before you have to fill up. So 5,000 kilometres left on that full tank of AdBlue and 1,000 kilometres left on the fuel. As you can see, when we as the gauge lowers, it does readjust this and recalculate it, so it will go down as the AdBlue levels go down. And then also an odometer for the drive it's on, so that'll reset each time you start a new drive within the truck. Our second chapter there is your odometer, so this is the most common function. People like the odometer digitally displayed on the instrument cluster. We also have Fleetboard Eco Support on our truck. So what Eco Support is it monitors the drivability or how the drive has been performing throughout the drive. So it measures things like even driving, how well they're using the accelerator pedal, roll brake, how well they're using the brakes, preemptive braking, how much they're letting the eco roll take over and let the truck coast without using the gear itself. Continuous braking, so whether it's start-stop operation or driving quite smoothly, the set speeds, use of continuous brakes as well, so it also monitors how often the driver is using things like the engine brake, compression brake, retarder if it's fitted, things like that. Their shift patterns, are they driving and shifting at the optimal time, and use of accelerator pedal. So Eco Support's a new function in our new trucks, and it's quite intuitive in measuring the driver's skills and letting them know where there are areas for an improvement. The assistance system, so we have a lane assist and a proximity control system. I'll go into more detail about that a bit later, but we'll get through some of these dash functions first. Backup drive mode is a safety function. It's if there is ever a mechanical problem with the truck or an electrical problem that may be blocking it from gears, you can go into a backup drive mode. It's like a limp home mode, so it allows you to force the truck into either 2nd or 5th gear and just basically limp you off the road or get you into a dealership at low speed. Instrument cluster is also set up for pre-wiring for a reverse camera. So our trucks have the ability to have a reverse camera, whether it be at the back of the truck or on the turntable for a prime mover. And when you go into reverse, this will pop up on the screen automatically. All our trucks are fitted standard with alarm clock, so we have the function to be able to set alarms within the trucks. Also Bluetooth telephone functionality and audio functionality is all within this menu. So this chapter is all about the audio and telephone Bluetooth type setup. As we get into chapter 4, this is information on the systems that are fitted to the truck. So an example we've got on this one, this truck has weight scales fitted. So chapter 4, page 1 will show you the weights on each axle. It's a calculated weight but reasonably accurate. If the truck is fitted with tyre pressure monitoring, it'll also show you the tyre pressures of the truck. Level control, so this function is obviously for the rear suspension, and it tells you whether the rear suspension, or if it's air suspension all around, whether the truck's lowered, raised or sitting in its neutral position. trailer function, if you have a smart trailer connected to the truck, you can also get a lot of these same readings out of the showing displaying on the dash if your trailer is suitable for it. And then the maintenance system. So when you go into the maintenance system, it'll actually tell you there's no dipsticks or no measuring systems outside of the truck. Everything is checked from within the driver's seat. So it'll tell you when your next maintenance service is due. So moving on to Chapter 5, these are what you'd call your gauges within the truck. It's all displayed within the dash. So here you can see the air pressure gauges. We have a primary and secondary air system, so it'll show each of those systems and what pressure they're sitting at. Coolant temperature, you can monitor that from here as well. Engine, so it'll monitor the engine oil. It says it's okay right now. If it is a little bit low, it'll tell you to add a litre or take a litre out if you put too much in. And you can see your engine hours in that part of the dash as well. Battery monitoring, so our trucks have battery monitoring. It'll tell you the status of the battery and give you a warning when batteries are getting low. And events, if there are any events, so for instance if you have a tail light out, it'll show up as an event within the truck itself here and tell you that your left-hand rear tail light is out. Diagnosis is quite a new function. This gives our technicians the ability to go into the truck. If there are any fault codes in it, they can actually flick through each of the control modules and work out which one of these has the fault and what it is. And then our final chapter down here is settings. So you can go through and adjust settings. Obviously the main menu settings where you can set times, whether you want kilometres per hour, miles per hour, gallons, litres, things like that. Lighting, there's a few functions to play with the lighting. You can adjust the brightness of the instrument cluster. You can set up different internal lights that'll come on automatically with the automatic headlight function and things like that. Language, obviously we can adjust to a multiple of languages. We'll leave it in English for this one. Service products, well what this does is tell you what kind of oil you need to fit, need to use on various components within the truck. So whether it be engines, axles, gearboxes, it'll give you a grade of oil that you should be using. And finally systems. So this system's function it can be expanded depending on the options you have, but it gives you the ability to turn on safety and economical features that come standard with the truck. So things like eco roll and crawler mode, you can have the ability to turn them on or off if you decide you don't want to use them. Attention assist, you can turn that off, and if some of the other systems are fitted, you can turn them on and off. Alright, so going through some of these controls on the steering wheel, as I said earlier, a lot of drivers prefer to have the digital display of the speedo up in the centre of the dash. So you have this little M button down here, which is a memory button. So if I hold that down, that stores that as a memory. So when I want to go to anything else, I can flick through, press the M button, and it's automatically going to go back to this stored display. So whichever display the driver decides that's what they want to see, you can store that in memory. You may have seen as I was scrolling through the instrument cluster, I was using these buttons here. So these are effectively your scroll buttons. Use them to go left and right through the menus, up and down through each page within the menu. An OK button to select it if it's available to be selected. The two buttons next to it, these are volume controls. So the volume can be adjusted for the stereo from within the steering wheel. Going over the other side, there's a few more functions here. So we have the phone buttons. When we have Bluetooth connected, you can answer and hang up your phone from the buttons within the steering wheel. The next lot of buttons here are what we call cruise control, speed limiter and adaptive cruise control. So that's all controlled within these buttons. When we go onto this instrument cluster down below here, you'll see a variety of information that's available. So for instance, we're in neutral here, we're not doing any speed, and we're down at 500 RPM, so that's idling along at the moment. When a driver hops into the truck, first off they'll go to the Stalk on the right hand side, and they'll select the drive function. So we're automatically gone into third gear, that's our takeoff gear in this instance. The vehicle's going to start moving. We'll jump ahead and get the driver up to 80 kilometres an hour. Let's say they're in 10th gear. Revs are up around 1300. So driver's coasting along. Driver's coasting along there. 80 kilometers an hour. You can see here that none of this is displayed, it's not activated. What you can do is start using these buttons here, so you can press the limiter button. And when you look at this part of the instrument cluster, it says you're in limiter mode, and we can set that. So we've set it at the speed we're doing, it's 80 kilometers an hour. So now we have our limiter function activated, and we cannot exceed 80 kilometers an hour with the truck. Certain instances where you might use that, obviously to maintain speed limit, but also when you're coasting down a hill, you might set the speed limit at 80, and that will tell the truck to automatically start applying engine brakes and things like that to maintain that speed where possible. Now the other functions from within here, so you've got the limiter button up above that, you've got this little display of, it looks like an odometer with an arrow next to it. When you press that, it toggles between, you can see the display changing here, so you've got the odometer with the arrow, which is the cruise control function, or you can toggle it to adaptive cruise control. So when you see a vehicle above it, that means you're in the adaptive cruise control mode, or proximity control we call it. So first off, let's show the cruise control. Pretty straightforward, very similar to all cruise control systems. Click set, and that's going to set your cruise at 80 kilometers an hour, because that's what your odometer is set at. And then you've got plus and minus on these same buttons, so you can go up in half-kilometre increments. Now if we toggle over to the adaptive cruise control function, you can see this car's set up here now. We've set our speed at 60 kilometres an hour. We're going to increase that to 70 kilometres an hour. What I'm going to do is bring up this function. So this is the vehicle display. So what it's showing is we're approaching a vehicle. This will actually display on the instrument cluster. So when it sees this vehicle coming ahead of it, as soon as it gets down to, this is the distance, this white line, so as soon as it gets down to 39 metres, our vehicle said, hang on, we're getting too close to this truck, we're going to back off. So you can see it's, even though our cruise is set at 70 kilometres an hour, it's adjusted our speed down, so we've gone down to about 63 kilometres an hour, which is the same speed of the vehicle in front. Now if this vehicle was to start moving again, that vehicle's sped up and it's taken off, the truck's detected that the gap's opening up again, and it's increased our speed back up to 70 kilometres an hour again. Now once that vehicle's gotten out of sight, it's no longer displayed on the dash. So this is how the adaptive cruise control function works. So we'll speed up and slow down for vehicles in front of us. Now a new function we have, because this is Active Brake Assist 3 now, and proximity control is the newest version of it. If the vehicle in front, you can see it's slowed right down, it's doing 56 kilometres an hour. Our vehicle slowed us down to that, but if you're in freeway traffic and it's bumper to bumper, if that vehicle comes to a complete stop, the adaptive cruise control will stop our vehicle as well. It'll come to a complete stop. Once the traffic starts moving again, that truck takes off, our truck will start moving again as well. So it's what we call the stop go function. So it's really intuitive for the freeway traffic or any sort of stop go traffic. Now you can see as well, beside all these displays, we've got these two lines either side. So what this is our lane assist function. And what it's telling us is it's measuring a broken line either side of the truck there, so your standard lane markings. If this was a solid line, it'd show up as a solid line as well. Now if the truck sways to the left or right, you'll hear an audible sound in the left or right speaker, but also you'll see on the dash that it comes up red and it tells you which side or which lane this vehicle is swaying out of. Gives you a warning, gets your attention and tells you that you need to get your eyes on the road. Another function we have here is, like I said, these three white lines. These are what we call time intervals. So it's saying that these are about 1 to 1.5 seconds each. So it's saying that at a 4.5 second distance between these vehicles, that's when you want the adaptive cruise control to operate. What we can do is adjust that as well. So at a higher speed, you might want to set a bit of a distance to feel a bit safer. And you can say, all right, I want a 6 or 7 second gap in between these vehicles. So at 100 kilometres an hour, that's quite a bit of distance. But if we're in freeway traffic, we're only doing 10 kilometres an hour, that's quite a large gap there, and you're going to have cars jumping in front of you all the time. Not ideal on a freeway, because you know, when a car jumps in front of you, you've got to stop suddenly. So what you can do is close that gap right up to just a 1 second gap, and it'll close up the distance between you and the vehicle in front. So what I did there as well was I used this last button, which I need to explain. So this is the drive functions that you can adjust. So in an idle mode, you can click it once and it brings up this idle gauge. And what you can do is adjust the idle up to 750 RPM. We'll have to display that on the truck outside. Second function, which we just spoke about, is the adaptive cruise control. So this adjusts the time intervals or the distance between you and the vehicle in front. And the final one is your Eco Drive function. So with Eco Drive, this will adjust when you got cruise control set. It'll tell the vehicle at what stage do you want it to start applying additional brakes or ancillary brakes, such as engine brake and things like that. So if you've got cruise control set at 80 and you have plus 9 kilometres, it'll allow the vehicle to get up to 89 kilometres before it automatically starts trying to slow itself down. The reasoning behind that is things, I guess when you're driving through hilly terrain, you know you've got your cruise set at 80, but you might say, hey, when I'm heading down a hill, I want it to actually go up to 89 kilometres an hour to get a bit of momentum to help me up the next hill. So it's really a fuel saving technique. So this is a sticker that we fit on the sun visor of our truck. So on the left hand side you can see the vision of the instrument cluster plus all the dash lights that may come on and what each of those dash lights are. So some of these are standard operations, some of these are explaining malfunctions within the truck, but at least the driver can tell when a light comes on what it is quite quickly. On the right hand side it explains the DPF function and the regeneration function. So our trucks are quite intuitive. Generally you'll only ever see the automatic regeneration light come on, but if you do get further stages down it can explain what each of these lights are and what they mean. So if we just zoom in, it explains what each of these buttons are. So the red one's there. It's like a traffic light system, so orange lights are generally not a problem. The red lights mean something needs to be looked at. So you can see there it's a steering wheel malfunction or the cab has been tilted and not gone back into its locked position. All your different drive functions, brake system malfunction if this one's on there, and then your standard headlights, engine brakes, park brakes and high beams and headlights. This stalk here, this is our drive function stalk. So you can see from the main switch here, it's pretty simple. There's an automated transmission. It's our new Power Shift 3 transmission. You can simply click this switch up to drive and there you go up in your drive position. Back to neutral or back down for reverse. This gearbox has the ability to switch from drive to reverse automatically, so if you are in drive and you flick it back to reverse quickly, it's not going to go and neutralise itself. The button on the end here is how we play with, you can see underneath the gear, we'll put her up in drive, we're in third gear and it's in the manual mode at the moment. So what this means is you'll push this stalk up and down, so down towards your feet or pull it up towards the steering wheel, and you can manually adjust gears or change gears while you're driving. So even though it's a fully automated transmission, there are some situations where you may need a manual mode. In particular, I guess working in quarries where you may want to coast down a hill in third gear and you don't want the truck to change gears, you can set your gear, or in hilly terrain you can pre-select gears when you can see the hills coming ahead. Another push of this function, we can have A economy. So this is just a standard drive mode when it's just standard A, but you can push it again and you've got A power. So what this does is it's a fully automated mode, but it changes the shifting patterns of the truck. So within power mode, it's just telling the truck it wants you to hold on to gears longer. So rather than changing to 14 to 1500 RPM, it will hold on to the gears up to about 1700 RPM. It just gives you a bit longer within each gear range. And also on the opposite end where you're downshifting gears, it'll downshift earlier. The last function, which is a bit hard to display on the stalk, but pushing it up towards the top, pulling it down towards yourself, there's 3 stages there on a standard truck, and there are 3 stages of engine brake. If you have a retarder fitted, there's 5 stages. So with a standard engine brake, all it does is apply compression brakes in 3 cylinders at the first stage, 6 cylinders when you go to the second stage, and then it also uses the EGR flap in the third stage for even more engine braking. If you have a retarder fitted, those 5 stages apply all the ancillary braking, but just in stages, in intervals of 20%. So uses decompression brakes and retarder, but at 20% power, then 40% power, etc., up to 100% in stage 5. So I hope you enjoyed the overview of the interior of the new Mercedes-Benz truck. If you have any further questions, please contact your local Mercedes-Benz dealership. In the meantime, drive safe.